Imagine you're 7 years old, happily riding your bike. You have a whole long summer ahead of you, which will be filled with adventures. And now you're 30. Home, work, home. And you can't even remember what happened over the last year. Who stole this sense of time from you? Why did one day used to seem like a separate chapter in our story, but now a whole year flies by so fast you don't even have time to remember it? Stay, and I'll tell you how to try and get that sense of time back using 6 simple and not so simple methods. And we'll also try to understand in detail why time flies by so fast for us as we get older. And the answer isn't as obvious as you might think. We'll compare your life to a chocolate bar, break it down mathematically, and also find out how quickly content takes our memories away from us. Make yourself comfortable. We're beginning.
Now just turn each over to the body.
Everyone has noticed it. In childhood, a day is an eternity. At 30, a week slips away like water. Why? Busyness, errands, routine. In truth, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Now we're going to figure out how we experience time in the moment and how we evaluate the past. Let me try to explain to you now why our sense of time slips away from us. Even if you're far from the field of mathematics, you still remember from your school days something called a proportion. So let's apply it to our lives. For example, let's take a 7-year-old and a 40-year-old person. To make it easier to understand, let's divide their years into months and imagine them as little squares. In the end, our 7-year-old child has lived only 84 months, while the 40-year-old adult has lived a whole 480. There are 12 months in a year. I suggest we color in 12 squares for each of our heroes. And what do we get? We can clearly see that for a 7-year-old child, 1/7 of their life is much more significant than 1/40 for an adult. For a child, it's not just another year, it's a huge part of their conscious life. The reason is relativity. The same year within these two lives occupies completely different periods of time in terms of significance relative to the person themselves. That's a bit complicated. Let's use simple words and an example. And for that, we'll need a regular bar of chocolate. Before, a year of your life was equal to this piece relative to the whole chocolate bar. This piece is quite large, and you can have a good and rather tasty tea party with it. But by the time you're 30, a year of your life is only equal to a small part of one piece, which unfortunately won't be enough for a tasty cup of tea. It's mathematically simple, but it only explains part of the phenomenon, because we still feel that this time isn't just less significant, it's actually faster. Okay, now tell me, when was the last time you did something radically new? Maybe you acquired a completely new skill or knowledge. And just so you know, I'm not talking about the news you've read or the latest gossip at work. I'm talking about something else. Basically, you'll understand this difference yourself right now. Remember your childhood, your first day of school, your first bicycle, the first fight with a friend. These are events that thrilled you, and along with you, your memory. This new experience created certain memory markers, just like when editing a video on a timeline. And the more of these markers there were, the longer that period of your life seems in retrospect. Adult life is often a routine. Many days look the same, and the brain stores them with less detail. You no longer get such vivid emotions from an ordinary day. That's why your memory doesn't quite understand why it should store it in vivid detail. But I can tell you a little life hack that'll help your memory record a little more information onto your hard drive than usual, thereby artificially giving you back the feeling of term. Let's do a little experiment. Look at this object and memorize as many details as you can in 10 seconds. The details don't have to be obvious. The task is to find as many as possible and remember them. Now go down to the comments and write as many as you could remember. If there are a lot of details, congratulations, you're in mindfulness numb. And if there are few, congratulations too, you're living in a routine. Regular practice of such 10 and 30-second observations will make your days richer and therefore longer in your memories. Of course, this won't give you an instant wow effect. This is more about the cumulative effect, but in the long run, it will allow your memory to better preserve memories. If you try to draw an analogy, it's like working out to make your muscles bigger and stronger. Yes, we can't literally grow our memory like a muscle, but we can stimulate it. I know I've probably bored you with the school curriculum, but let's still recall some residual knowledge in the field of chemistry and biology. I think you've probably heard, seen, or read somewhere about dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter that helps transmit nerve impulses between neurons and is responsible for emotions, learning, and the feeling of pleasure. How does it work? In simple terms, when something unexpected and positive appears in a person's life, the dopamine level rises. The person gets a feeling of pleasure, after which the level falls, which should prompt the person to repeat this cycle. Dopamine makes the moment more vivid and helps to better encode events in memory. When we are young, everything is new. Dopamine constantly fuels memory, and the days seem longer. When habit takes over, dopamine decreases and the impressions are flat. Besides that, attention plays a key role. The more attentively we look at the world, the more details get encoded. So I have another little life hack for you, which is also a homework assignment. On your next walk or commute to school or work, try to remember 3 of the most vivid objects for you. It can be absolutely anything. For example, a person with a bright umbrella, a funny dog wagging its tail, or the unusual behavior of people at a bus stop. It's important that you remember them in as much detail as possible and try to retain these objects or situations in your memory. And before you go to sleep, try to reproduce them in your imagination in the most vivid colors. This is another way to help your memory better retain memories and increase the sensation of time itself. The modern world is a time trap. When the mind is busy switching between tasks, we get lost and experience events on fast forward. Numerous studies show that multitasking impairs memory encoding. Simply put, if you're constantly distracted, you don't create memories. A paradox. It seems like you've done a lot, but little remains in your memory. And that means time passed quickly for you. Damn, how much time has passed? What was that just now? Well, besides the stage scene, 4 hours spent on short videos flew by in a flash. Another paradox. Short videos, which have become so beloved by millions, cause the exact same dopamine release as new events. But there's a big but. Due to the frequent stimulation of the dopamine system, the brain has simply adapted to a high level of stimulation. And on top of that, due to the frequent switching between short fragments of bright content, the brain doesn't have time to manage the transition from short-term to long-term memory. Therefore, instead of deeply processing information, your brain switches to a surface-level scanning mode. Write in the comments if you've ever had it happen where after a few hours spent on short-form content, you couldn't even remember what exactly you watched. And it's not that there's something wrong with you, it's just that your brain physically can't process that much information and record it into long-term memory. That's why it can't create memories. So it's better, if you want to get back the feeling of time, to choose longer content. And even better, limit its consumption to a certain amount per day. For example, no more than 3 hours. Alright, let's move on. After all, it's not just from watching dances set to music that it seems to us that the world gets faster with age. Remember how often in childhood you could eat all sorts of junk food and your body didn't really react to it? And adults would say that you just have a fast metabolism because you're a kid. Well, metabolism plays a role not only in the rapid absorption of food, but also in our relationship with time. With age, metabolism slows down a bit, which means the metabolic rate in cells also slows, leading to time feeling more fleeting for a person. It's important to emphasize that this is still more of a hypothesis, but at the same time, many scientists have conducted work in these areas and have provided many arguments in favor of this very hypothesis. Here's an interesting situation. The faster the metabolism, the slower time itself is. But we also have what's called the oddball effect. Every unusual event becomes a noticeable marker. What could that mean? The effect is that due to the novelty of a stimulus, the brain spends more time processing it, and that means the time around you seems slower. For example, you've just been brought to first grade. You're in shock, surrounded by many other children who are just as confused about what's going on. You're being told something, then you go somewhere, and all of this is new to you. Besides you, your brain is also in shock. All of this is unfamiliar to it too, and it's trying to process all the information you're getting. That's why the time you spent in elementary school seems slower than in high school. You see, emotions enhance memory. Vivid experiences get locked in your memory much more deeply. So if you want a year to seem longer, create these emotional peaks. Let's summarize. Time goes faster for us as we age. That's a fact. Because a whole year, relative to the life we've already lived, becomes less and less significant. Also, our perception of time is influenced by markers, events that are new to us, and the more of them there are, the longer that period of time will seem to us. And during these new events, the brain experiences a rise in dopamine, which helps form vivid memories. But with our actions, we can disrupt the brain's work by endlessly consuming short-form content. So we should try to set limits for ourselves. We also saw a connection between our metabolism and our perception of time, and we figured out what the oddball effect is. At the beginning of the episode, I promised to give you a few ways to slow down your perception of time at the end. In principle, we've already mentioned a few life hacks with memorizing the distinctive features of an object for a while, and with memory training by saving 3 things in your memory on your way home, to work, or to school. But there are a few more ways. For example, make it a habit to do at least one new thing every month. It doesn't have to be a flight to Mars right away. Start with a completely new dish, a hobby, or even a different route to work. That's enough to gradually give your brain new emotions. Start a memory marker journal. I understand that this is something out of a children's pastime, but you'd be surprised how by writing down just one phrase a day that would characterize a vivid emotion experienced that day, you'll be able to accumulate many memories over a year. Also, try to create 15-minute blocks for yourself without devices. That is, turn off notifications for a quarter of an hour. Believe me, your business won't go anywhere during this time, but it will help you get out of the information noise, at least for a little while. Turn on some relaxing music and just finally be yourself for these 15 minutes and create emotional peaks for yourself. Of course, there is a 100% option that works, but it's not very easy to apply. I'm talking about traveling. It's not for nothing that there's a phrase, travel prolongs life. If you remember a time you went away for a week while your friends stayed in their usual rhythm of life, you'll realize that for you, that week was much longer than it was for them. You had something new every day, so when you returned, you saw that your friends didn't even notice how the time had passed. But for you, it felt as if you had lived a whole month. But you don't have to start with traveling right away. Give yourself an unusual challenge, throw a mini party, go to a workshop. This will help bring those very emotional peaks into your life and in turn create memories. There are a huge number of other ways. The main thing to remember is that you definitely shouldn't get buried in the flow of work, daily routine, and content. After all, we only have one life and it's up to us to decide how to live it, quickly or slowly. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Write a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. As always, this has been the Fata Morgana channel. And remember, it only gets more interesting from here.